The sky above New Geneva was perfect blue. 3 suns hung in the morning sky, casting gentle shadows across the festival grounds. Children ran between colorful tents, their laughter mixing with music that played from speakers hidden among the trees. Parents watched with tired smiles, holding drinks and talking about nothing important. It was the festival of first steps, the day when humanity celebrated the children who would grow up on worlds far from Earth. Ambassador Helena Vasquez remembered bringing her own daughter to this festival 20 years ago. Now that daughter had children of her own, and they were somewhere in this crowd, probably eating too much candy and begging for toys. Helena smiled at the thought as she prepared for her transport to the Galactic Council meeting. "Ambassador, your shuttle is ready," her assistant called. Helena took one last look at the festival. 400,000 people had gathered on the Great Plains outside the capital city. Most of them were families. Most of them were children. She could hear them singing the old Earth songs that humans always sang at gatherings like this. She never saw them again. The Varaxian fleet emerged from hyperspace without warning. 12 massive warships appeared in the sky like dark clouds blocking the suns. The people below looked up in confusion. The Varaxians had no business in this system. They were competitors with humanity, yes, but not enemies. Not yet. The bombardment began 18 seconds after the ships arrived. Plasma fire rained down on the festival grounds. The first strikes hit the center of the gathering, where the main stage had been set up for the children's choir performance. The sound of singing turned to screaming in an instant. Parents grabbed their children and ran, but there was nowhere to run. The Varaxian ships moved in a careful pattern, their targeting computers ensuring that no section of the festival went untouched. Helena's shuttle had just cleared the atmosphere when the attack began. She watched through the viewport as fire consumed the land below. She tried to contact the surface, but all communications had gone dead. She tried to contact the orbital defense platforms, but they had been destroyed in the first seconds of the attack. The Varaxians had planned this carefully. The bombardment lasted 18 minutes. When it ended, the Varaxian fleet jumped back into hyperspace without a single transmission, without a single demand, without a single explanation. They had done what they came to do and saw no reason to stay. Where 400,000 people had gathered to celebrate life, there was now only ash and silence. Helena's shuttle turned back toward the surface, but there was nothing to return to. The rescue teams that arrived hours later found no survivors. The Varaxians had used weapons designed to ensure complete destruction. They had not come to conquer or capture. They had come to send a message. The news reached Earth within hours. It spread across human space like a wave of cold water. People stopped what they were doing and stared at screens showing images of the destruction. They read the names of the dead as they scrolled past. Too many names to comprehend. They saw the pictures of the children who had been playing just hours before. And then came the Varaxian announcement. The Varaxian Dominion released a statement claiming responsibility for the attack. They called it a necessary correction of human expansion into territories the Varaxians considered their own. They expected humanity to respond by withdrawing from 3 contested star systems. They expected negotiations and eventual surrender of the disputed areas. They had calculated, based on 2 centuries of human behavior, that humans would choose peace over conflict. They had made a terrible mistake. Helena Vasquez stood in the great chamber of the Galactic Council, surrounded by representatives of 100 different species. The Varaxian ambassador, a tall creature with gray skin and too many eyes, was speaking with confidence about the new reality of galactic politics. He explained that humanity had overextended itself and that the Dominion had simply reminded them of their place. The other species watched carefully. Some of them had similar thoughts about humanity. The humans were soft, they believed, good at medicine and teaching and building, but not suited for the harsh realities of galactic competition. Perhaps the Varaxians had done what others had been too cautious to do. Helena waited until the Varaxian finished speaking. Then she stood and the chamber went quiet. 400,000 people, she said. Her voice was steady. Including 150,000 children, my grandchildren among them. The Varaxian ambassador showed no reaction. Regrettable casualties of political necessity, he said. Humanity should have respected our territorial claims. You forced our hand. Helena looked at him for a long moment. The other ambassadors noticed something strange. The human woman's face had changed. The diplomatic smile was gone. Something else had taken its place. Something very old and very cold. "You have made a terrible mistake," Helena said. "Not because we will destroy you, though we will. Not because we will make you suffer, though you will. You made a mistake because you woke something that we have spent 200 years trying to keep asleep." She pressed a button on her console. "As of this moment, all human diplomatic personnel are recalled from all worlds. All human aid programs are suspended. All human ships are returning to human space. Our borders are closed until further notice." The chamber erupted in confusion. Species that depended on human medical technology began to panic. Trade partners calculated the economic damage. Military strategists wondered what the humans were planning. The Varaxian ambassador laughed. "You see," he said to the assembly, "they retreat, they hide. This is the human response to strength. They are not warriors. They are prey animals pretending to be people." Helena gathered her materials and walked toward the exit. She stopped at the door and turned back. "In my culture," she said, "there is an old saying, 'Beware the anger of a patient man.' You have been dealing with humanity's patience for 2 centuries. You have mistaken our gentleness for weakness. You have assumed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war." She looked directly at the Varaxian ambassador. "My grandchildren died singing. They were singing about hope and friendship between species. They believed in a galaxy where people could live together in peace. You killed that belief along with them. Now you will meet the humans who exist when hope is dead." She left the chamber without another word. On Earth, President Maria Santos addressed a silent world. Every screen on every human world showed her face. Behind her stood military commanders who had not worn their uniforms in decades. Their eyes were hard. "Today we activate Protocol Prometheus," the president said. "This protocol was established by our founders when humanity first reached for the stars. They hoped it would never be needed. They prepared for the day when it would be." Across human space, things began to change. Mining facilities on remote moons opened to reveal shipyards that had been building warships in secret for 200 years. Agricultural worlds revealed underground factories producing weapons that human scientists had designed but never deployed. Training academies that humanity claimed were schools for emergency response personnel began issuing real assignments. Marcus Chen was tending his garden when the notification arrived. He was 73 years old and had spent the last 30 years growing vegetables on a quiet farming world. His neighbors knew him as a gentle man who gave away most of his harvest to families who needed it. His grandchildren thought of him as the grandfather who told silly jokes and made the best dumplings in the colony. They did not know that Marcus Chen had once been Fleet Admiral Chen, commander of humanity's secret military forces. They did not know that his farming world sat above one of the largest hidden shipyards in human space. They did not know that the man who spent his mornings pulling weeds had spent his nights running war simulations against every major power in the galaxy. Marcus read the notification twice. Then he went inside and opened a closet that had been locked for 30 years. His old uniform hung there, perfectly preserved. His rank insignia had been updated remotely as the protocols required. He was still Fleet Admiral. He had always been Fleet Admiral. His granddaughter Sarah found him standing in front of the mirror, wearing the uniform. She had never seen him look like this. The gentle farmer was gone. The man in the mirror had eyes that had seen terrible things and was prepared to see terrible things again. "Grandfather," she said, "what is happening?" Marcus turned to her. Sarah was 25 years old and had trained her whole life for this moment without knowing it. The emergency response training she had received since childhood was actually military training in disguise. The strategic games her grandfather had taught her were actually tactical simulations. Everything had been preparation. "New Geneva," Marcus said. "You saw the news?" Sarah nodded. Her eyes were wet. She had friends on New Geneva. Everyone knew someone who had been at the festival. "The Varaxians think we are weak," Marcus said. "They think that because we chose to be healers and teachers, we forgot how to be warriors. They are wrong. We never forgot. We just hoped we would never have to remember." He took her hands in his. "I am sorry, Sarah. I am sorry that the galaxy did not let you live in peace. I am sorry that you will now see what humans become when our children are murdered. I am sorry that I could not protect you from this. 3 weeks later, a message broadcast from human space to every corner of the galaxy. It showed the ruins of New Geneva. It showed the bodies. It showed the small shoes and toys scattered among the ash. Then a voice spoke, calm and cold. We came to you as friends. We healed your sick. We educated your young. We asked for nothing but peaceful coexistence. And you killed our children. Now meet the other side of humanity. The first human fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Vraxian territory. A Galactic Council observer who witnessed the emergence sent a frantic message home. His hands shook as he typed. They have been building ships for 2 centuries. They have more firepower than the Vraxians have ever seen. They are coming, and there is nothing in the galaxy that can stop them. We thought we knew humanity. We were wrong. The species we knew is gone. Something else is wearing their face now. And it is angry. The stars themselves seemed to dim as the human fleet advanced. The war had begun. 3 weeks of silence followed the withdrawal of humanity from galactic affairs. The Vraxian Dominion celebrated what they called a great victory. Their news channels showed images of empty human embassies and abandoned aid stations. They told their people that the soft humans had run away, just as predicted. The galaxy would soon forget the incident at New Geneva, and the natural order would be restored. The Vraxian High Commander, a decorated warrior named Korvax, addressed his military council with confidence. The humans have proven what we always suspected, he said. They are a species of merchants and doctors, not fighters. Their threats were empty noise. Within a year, they will return to the negotiating table, ready to give us everything we demanded. His intelligence officers agreed. Every analysis said the same thing. Humans had no significant military capability. Their ships were designed for transport and exploration, not war. Their population was spread across hundreds of worlds, making coordination impossible. The Vraxians had calculated every variable and found nothing to fear. They had calculated wrong. Deep within human space, something ancient was waking up. On every human world, people who had lived quiet lives were receiving messages that changed everything. Teachers, farmers, engineers, and shopkeepers opened old files and remembered old training. They had always known this day might come. Their parents had told them. Their grandparents had warned them. Now the preparation was over, and the real work would begin. Fleet Admiral Marcus Chen stood in the command center of the battleship Prometheus, named for the protocol that had brought it out of hiding. The ship was one of 3,000 that had emerged from secret construction facilities across human space. 3,000 warships built over 2 centuries, maintained by skeleton crews who had sworn oaths of secrecy, equipped with weapons that had never been tested in actual combat. Until now. Admiral, all fleet elements report ready, his executive officer announced. Awaiting your orders. Marcus looked at the tactical display. The first wave would consist of 500 ships, more than enough to overwhelm the Vraxian border defenses. The remaining fleets would follow in sequence, each wave larger than the last. The Vraxians were expecting negotiators. They would receive something very different. His granddaughter Sarah stood at the communication station. She had graduated from basic officer training just 2 weeks ago, part of the accelerated program that was turning millions of civilians into soldiers. Her hands were steady on the controls, but Marcus could see the fear behind her eyes. Good. Fear kept soldiers alive. It was the ones who felt nothing that worried him. Sarah, he said, open a channel to all ships. She nodded and activated the fleet-wide broadcast. Every human in the combined fleet heard what came next. 200 years ago, our ancestors left Earth and found a galaxy full of wonders and dangers. They could have become conquerors like so many species before them. They chose instead to become builders. They created a civilization based on healing and teaching and peaceful cooperation. They believed that if humans showed the galaxy kindness, the galaxy would show kindness in return. Marcus paused, letting the silence speak for itself. 3 weeks ago, the Vraxian Dominion killed 400,000 of our people, including 150,000 children, because they believed our kindness was weakness. They believed that centuries of peace had made us forget how to fight. They were wrong. He stood straighter, his voice hardening. Humanity did not forget. We never forgot. We simply hoped we would never need to remember. That hope died on New Geneva along with our children. Today we stop hoping. Today we remember. Today the galaxy learns what humanity becomes when our children are murdered. The channel closed. The fleet began to move. On the Varaxian border world of Corvath Prime, Defense Commander Thrax was reviewing routine reports when his sensors screamed warnings. He stared at the display, certain there must be an error. 500 contacts had appeared at the edge of the system. 500 ships, each larger than anything in the Varaxian fleet. That is impossible, he whispered. They have no military. His communications officer looked up with fear in his eyes. Commander, we are receiving a transmission from the human fleet. On screen. A human face appeared. It was a woman, young but with eyes that seemed much older. She wore a military uniform that Thrax had never seen before, decorated with symbols that meant nothing to him. This is Lieutenant Sarah Chen of the United Human Fleet, the woman said. You have 1 hour to evacuate all military personnel from this system. Any ships that remain after that time will be destroyed. Any ships that surrender will be treated according to galactic conventions. You have 1 hour. I suggest you use it wisely. The transmission ended. Thrax stood frozen for a moment, then began shouting orders. His fleet of 40 ships was already launching, preparing to defend the system. 40 against 500. Even Thrax knew those odds were hopeless. He sent a desperate message to the Varaxian High Command. Human fleet has entered Corvath system. Request immediate reinforcement. This is not a raid. This is an invasion. The response from High Command came 20 minutes later. Hold position. Reinforcements en route. The humans are bluffing. They have no capability for sustained combat. Thrax watched his tactical display as the human fleet advanced. They moved with perfect coordination, each ship maintaining exact distance from its neighbors. This was not the movement of inexperienced crews. This was the movement of forces that had trained for decades. When the hour expired, Thrax gave the order to attack. His 40 ships charged toward the human line, weapons blazing. The humans did not respond at first. They simply absorbed the incoming fire with shields that glowed bright blue but did not fail. Then they returned fire. The battle lasted 12 minutes. 12 minutes to destroy 38 Varaxian warships. 2 ships had surrendered and were taken intact. Thrax himself died on the bridge of his flagship, still trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. News of the Corvath defeat reached the Varaxian homeworld within hours. High Commander Korvax dismissed it as an ambush, a lucky strike against an unprepared garrison. He ordered the main battle fleet to assemble and crush the human invaders. He did not know that similar battles were happening on every border world. He did not know that human fleets were emerging at dozens of points along Varaxian space. He did not know that the species he had dismissed as weak was systematically dismantling his empire's defenses like a surgeon removing a tumor. On Earth, President Santos monitored the campaign from the Global Command Center. Casualty reports scrolled across her screens. Human losses were minimal. Varaxian losses were catastrophic. The war was proceeding exactly as the simulations had predicted. A message arrived from Ambassador Helena Vasquez, who had rejoined the Galactic Council to observe their reactions. The other species are terrified, Helena wrote. They had no idea. None of them had any idea. The Solari ambassador told me they always suspected, but even they are shocked by the scale. The question everyone is asking is the same. What else have the humans been hiding? The answer to that question arrived at the Varaxian homeworld 3 weeks into the campaign. A single human ship appeared in orbit around Varaxia Prime, but it was not like the warships that had devastated the border fleets. This ship was enormous, larger than any station the Varaxians had ever built. It hung in the sky like a moon that had wandered too close. High Commander Korvax ordered every available ship to attack. 300 vessels opened fire on the giant craft. The ship's shields absorbed the bombardment without visible effect. Then it spoke. I am the carrier Prometheus, flagship of the United Human Fleet. I carry no weapons. I carry no soldiers. I carry a message. The ship broadcast directly to every screen on the Varaxian homeworld. Civilians looked up at the impossible craft and listened. Your leaders told you that humans were weak. Your leaders told you that attacking New Geneva was a political necessity. Your leaders told you that we would retreat and surrender. Your leaders lied. Images began to play. The festival of first steps, children singing, families dancing, then the attack, the fire, the ash, the small bodies. 150,000 children died because your leaders believed that kindness was weakness. They were wrong. Humans chose to be kind because we know what we are capable of when kindness fails. Your leaders have now awakened that capability. The broadcast shifted to show the burning wreckage of Varaxian warships across a dozen star systems. It showed military bases reduced to rubble and orbital stations drifting lifeless in space. We have not attacked your civilians. We have not bombarded your cities. We have not killed your children. We could. We have the capability to sterilize every world in your empire. We have weapons your scientists cannot imagine. We have chosen not to use them. The carrier Prometheus began to withdraw. This is not mercy. This is a demonstration. We want you to understand exactly what we could do and exactly what we are choosing not to do. Your leaders made war on our children. We are making war on your military. See the difference. Remember the difference. Tell your leaders to remember the difference when they decide whether to continue fighting or to surrender. The giant ship jumped into hyperspace and vanished. On the surface, Varaxian citizens stood in the streets, staring at the empty sky. They had believed their leaders. They had celebrated the attack on New Geneva. Now they understood the truth. They had not attacked a weak species. They had attacked a sleeping giant and had only just begun to feel its anger. High Commander Korvax received reports from every front. Defeat after defeat. His entire border defense network destroyed in less than a month. Supply lines cut, communications disrupted. The humans were not just winning. They were winning with such precision that it seemed almost scripted. How? He demanded of his intelligence officers. How do they know exactly where to strike? How do they predict our every movement? The answer came from an analyst who had been studying human culture for decades. They have been running war simulations against us for 200 years, she said. Every trade negotiation, every diplomatic exchange, every cultural program was also an intelligence operation. They know everything about us. Our tactics, our strategies, our weaknesses. They have planned for this war since the day they entered the galaxy. Korvax stared at her. Then why did they not attack first? If they had this power, why did they wait? The analyst shook her head. Because they did not want to use it. They truly wanted peace. They hoped we would never give them a reason to fight. But we did. We killed their children. And now they will not stop until they have made absolutely certain that it can never happen again. Outside the windows, the Varaxian sun was setting. Somewhere beyond that sunset, human fleets were advancing. And there was nothing the Varaxians could do to stop them. 6 months after the attack on New Geneva, the Varaxian dominion was broken. Their once proud military had been reduced to scattered remnants hiding in asteroid fields and abandoned stations. Their economy had collapsed as human forces cut every supply line and trade route. Their government was fragmenting as regional governors blamed each other for the disaster. High Commander Korvax sat in his bunker beneath the capital city of Raxia Prime, staring at reports that seemed more like nightmares than military documents. Every offensive had failed. Every defensive line had crumbled. The humans seemed to know exactly where to strike and exactly when to strike. They fought with a cold efficiency that Korvax had never seen in any species. And yet they had not killed civilians. Not one bombardment of a population center. Not one attack on a hospital or school. They destroyed military targets with surgical precision and left everything else untouched. This terrified Korvax more than anything else. An enemy seeking revenge would burn everything. An enemy with this kind of control was planning something much worse than destruction. The human fleet had surrounded Varaxia Prime, but had not attacked. They simply waited, blocking all traffic in and out of the system. The Varaxian homeworld was under siege, but it was a siege without violence. The humans were letting the Varaxians destroy themselves. In the capital city, riots had broken out. Citizens who had once celebrated the attack on New Geneva now demanded the heads of the leaders who had ordered it. Statues of Korvax were torn down and burned. Moderate politicians who had opposed the attack were suddenly popular. Hardliners who had championed it were hiding or dead. Admiral Marcus Chen watched the chaos from the bridge of his flagship. Sarah stood beside him, monitoring communications from the surface. The Varaxian news channels were showing footage of government buildings on fire, set ablaze by their own people. "They are tearing themselves apart," Sarah said. "Should we intervene?" Marcus shook his head. "This is not our war to fight. The Varaxians who ordered the attack on New Geneva must answer to their own people. If we occupy their world, we become conquerors. If we let them find their own justice, we remain liberators." Sarah frowned. "Is there a difference?" "There is always a difference. Conquerors are hated. Liberators are remembered." Marcus turned to face her. "We did not start this war to rule the Varaxians. We started it to ensure they could never harm our children again. That goal is almost complete." A communication request arrived from the Varaxian surface. Marcus nodded, and Sarah opened the channel. A Varaxian face appeared on screen. This was not a military commander or government official. It was an older female with tired eyes and gray skin, marked by scars of age. She wore simple civilian clothing. "I am Elder Threnix," she said. "I speak for the Coalition of Moderate Voices. We have taken control of the civilian government after the military council's collapse. High Commander Korvax is in custody, along with the other architects of the New Geneva attack. We wish to negotiate a surrender." Marcus studied her face. The Coalition of Moderate Voices had been a minor political faction before the war. They had publicly opposed the attack on New Geneva and had been ignored. Now they were the only legitimate authority left on Varaxia Prime. "What terms do you propose?" Marcus asked. Elder Threnix bowed her head. "We propose unconditional surrender. We ask only for mercy for our civilians, who did not order the attack and did not want the war. We offer the war criminals for whatever justice you require. We offer full access to our military records so you can confirm the destruction of all weapons. We offer everything we have. We have nothing left to bargain with." The bridge was silent. Officers who had lost friends and family at New Geneva watched the screen with hard eyes. Some wanted vengeance. Some wanted the Varaxians to suffer as they had suffered. The desire was understandable. Marcus took a long breath. "Elder Threnix, humanity accepts your surrender. We will not occupy your world. We will not harm your civilians. We will not demand reparations that would destroy your economy. But we will require 3 things." The elder waited, her expression guarded. "First, the individuals who planned and ordered the attack on New Geneva will stand trial before an interspecies tribunal. This trial will be public. Every species in the galaxy will see the evidence of what was done and why." Threnix nodded. "This is fair." "Second, your military will be dismantled completely. You will retain only defensive forces sufficient to protect your homeworld from pirates and natural disasters. You will have no capability to project force beyond your own system for at least 1 generation." Threnix winced but nodded again. "This is harsh but understandable." "Third, you will participate in a cultural exchange program with humanity. Your young people will learn our history. Our young people will learn yours. We will work together to ensure that both our species understand how this war began and why it must never happen again." The elder looked confused. "You want us to teach your children?" "I want our children to know you as people, not as monsters. And I want your children to know us as people, not as conquerors. The greatest protection against future wars is understanding. We will build that understanding together, or we will wait for your grandchildren to make the same mistakes your leaders made." Threnix stared at him for a long moment. Then she began to weep. "We expected destruction," she said. "We expected our cities to burn and our people to die. We expected you to be like us, only stronger. But you are not like us at all, are you?" Marcus shook his head. "We are exactly like you. That is what frightens us. Humans have committed atrocities throughout our history. We have burned cities and murdered children and destroyed civilizations. We know exactly what we are capable of because we have done it before. We built a peaceful civilization not because we are naturally peaceful, but because we chose to be better than our history. You killed our children, and for a moment, we almost forgot that choice. We almost became what you expected us to become. He paused, his voice heavy with exhaustion. We chose not to. We chose restraint. We chose precision. We chose to destroy your military and spare your civilians. Not because you deserved mercy, but because we could not afford to become the kind of species that kills children in revenge for killed children. That path has no end. We found the end of it once, long ago, and we will not walk it again. The surrender was formalized 3 days later. Human forces landed on Varaxia Prime, but they did not march through the streets as conquerors. They set up medical stations and food distribution centers. They helped repair infrastructure damaged by the civil unrest. They treated Varaxian civilians with the same professionalism they would have shown their own people. The Galactic Council watched in disbelief. Species that had expected humanity to destroy the Varaxians instead saw humans helping them rebuild. Ambassadors who had feared being the next target of human aggression began to wonder if they had misunderstood everything. The Solari ambassador requested a private meeting with Helena Vasquez. She met him in the rebuilt human embassy on the council station, surrounded by images of New Geneva that would never let anyone forget why the war had happened. I must ask you something, the Solari said. Your people had the power to destroy the Varaxians completely. You chose not to. Why? Helena considered the question carefully. Because destruction would have changed us more than it changed them. The Varaxians who ordered the attack on New Geneva are dead or in prison. The Varaxians who carried it out are dead or surrendered. The Varaxians who remain are civilians who did not choose this war any more than our children chose to die in it. Destroying them would not bring our children back. It would only prove that we had become the kind of species that kills children. The Solari nodded slowly. Among my people, there is a saying, the true test of power is in its restraint. You have passed a test that many species never face. Helena smiled sadly. We did not want to be tested. We wanted to grow vegetables and teach children and explore the stars. We wanted to believe that kindness was enough to keep us safe. We were wrong. Now we must find a way to be both kind and strong. It is harder than it sounds. On Varaxia Prime, Sarah Chen had been assigned to a reconstruction team in one of the capital's outer districts. She worked alongside Varaxian volunteers, clearing rubble and distributing supplies. At first, the Varaxians avoided her. They feared her uniform and her species and the power that both represented. Gradually, that fear began to fade. Sarah helped a Varaxian family repair their home. She played with Varaxian children who had never met a human before. She learned words in their language and taught them words in hers. She showed them that the monsters they had been told about were just people like them. One evening, a Varaxian mother approached her. The woman's eyes were wet with tears. My brother was on one of the ships your fleet destroyed, she said. He was a gunner on a cruiser. He died in the first week of the war. Sarah stood still, unsure how to respond. She had fired weapons in that first week. She might have killed this woman's brother herself. I hated you, the mother continued. I hated all humans. You took my brother from me, and I wanted every one of you to die. She paused, struggling to find words. Then I watched you help rebuild my neighbor's house. I watched you feed our children when our government could not. I watched you treat our wounded when our doctors ran away. And I realized something. What? Sarah asked. We attacked you first. We killed your children first. And instead of killing ours, you helped them. The mother reached out and took Sarah's hand. I do not understand your species. I do not understand how you can be so strong and so gentle at the same time. But I want to understand. I want my children to understand. I want this war to mean something more than death and grief. Sarah squeezed her hand. That is all we want too. Understanding. Maybe if we build enough of it, no one will ever have to lose a brother or a child to war again. The mother smiled through her tears. You truly believe that is possible? Sarah looked up at the stars, visible now that the fires had stopped burning. Somewhere up there, her grandfather was commanding a fleet powerful enough to destroy worlds. Somewhere up there, human ships waited with weapons that could end civilizations. And yet they had chosen restraint. They had chosen mercy. They had chosen to build rather than destroy. I have to believe it is possible, Sarah said. Otherwise, what was the point of any of this? We survived. We won. Now we have to prove that winning means something. The stars glittered above them, silent and eternal, watching two species begin the long process of learning to trust each other again. 1 year after the surrender, the War Crimes Tribunal began. The Galactic Council had never hosted such an event. Representatives from every known species gathered to witness the trial of those who had ordered the attack on New Geneva. The evidence was overwhelming. The defendants had no defense except to claim that they had acted in what they believed were their people's best interests. The prosecution was led by a human legal team, but the judges came from 12 different species. This was humanity's demand. They did not want the trial to look like revenge. They wanted it to look like justice, blind and impartial, and based purely on the facts. High Commander Korvax sat in the defendant's box, stripped of his rank and his pride. He had led armies that conquered star systems. Now he sat in chains while aliens debated his fate. His expression was empty, as if he had already accepted whatever judgment would come. The trial lasted 3 months. Every piece of evidence was examined. Every witness was heard. The defendants were given every opportunity to explain their actions. When the verdict finally came, no one was surprised. Guilty on all counts. Crimes against sentient beings, deliberate targeting of civilians, mass murder of children. The sentences varied from life imprisonment to execution, depending on each defendant's level of involvement. Korvax was sentenced to death. He accepted the verdict without emotion. His last words, was spoken to the assembled gallery, were unexpected. "I believed that humans were weak," he said. "I believed that attacking them would bring my people glory and territory. I was wrong. I was wrong about everything. Humans are not weak. They are the strongest species in this galaxy, not because of their weapons, but because of their restraint. They could have killed every Vraxian alive. They chose not to. I have no such restraint. That is why I am here, and that is why they are not." He turned to face the human delegation. "I killed your children because I thought it would make you afraid. Instead, it made you terrible. And even in your terribleness, you were more merciful than I could ever be. I do not understand your species. I do not think I ever will. But I know now that the galaxy belongs to you, not because you conquered it, but because you earned it." The execution was carried out the following day. It was not broadcast. Humanity had no interest in spectacle. Justice had been served. That was enough. The tribunal's conclusion marked the beginning of a new phase in galactic history. The evidence presented during the trial had revealed the full extent of humanity's hidden power. Every species now knew that the gentle humans they had traded with and learned from had been secretly building one of the most powerful military forces ever assembled. They had lied for 2 centuries, and they had lied convincingly. Some species were angry. They felt betrayed by humans who had presented themselves as peaceful while preparing for war. The Calori Confederation filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Council, accusing humanity of deception and demanding that they dismantle their military. The human response was delivered by Ambassador Helena Vasquez, who had aged 10 years in the 12 months since New Geneva. Her hair was white now, and her face was lined with grief that would never fully heal. But her voice was strong. "Humanity deceived you," she admitted to the council. "We built weapons in secret. We trained soldiers while claiming to have none. We prepared for war while preaching peace. All of this is true. We apologize for the deception, but not for the preparation." She looked around the chamber at the faces of 100 species. "For 2 centuries, we tried to show you that kindness could be strong. We healed your sick and taught your young, and asked for nothing in return. We hoped that if we were good neighbors, you would be good neighbors in return. Most of you were, but some of you looked at our kindness and saw weakness. Some of you wondered what would happen if you attacked us. Some of you made plans." Helena pulled up a display showing intelligence reports. "We know about those plans. We have always known. The Vraxians were not the only species that considered attacking human space. They were simply the first to act. Our deception was not malicious. It was protective. We hid our weapons because we hoped never to use them. We revealed them only when we had no other choice." She turned off the display. "If we had been honest about our military from the beginning, many species would have seen us as a threat to be destroyed. We would have spent 2 centuries fighting wars instead of building schools. More children would have died, both human and alien. Our deception was the price of peace. We paid it willingly. The Kalori ambassador rose to respond. And what assurance do we have that you will not use these weapons against us? You have proven that you can hide your true capabilities. How do we know you are not hiding something even worse? Helena smiled sadly. You do not know. That is the honest answer. We could be hiding weapons that make our current fleet look like toys. We could have plans to conquer every species in the galaxy. We could be waiting for the right moment to strike. The chamber went very quiet. But if that were true, Helena continued, why did we spare the Varaxians? We had every justification to destroy them. Our people demanded revenge. Our military had the capability to deliver it. We chose restraint instead, not because we are weak, but because we refuse to become monsters. She spread her hands. This is the only assurance we can offer. We will not attack anyone who does not attack us first. We will respond to aggression with overwhelming force, but we will always stop short of genocide. We will be terrible enemies and loyal friends. The choice of which we become belongs to you. The council debated for weeks. In the end, they reached no consensus. Some species accepted humanity's explanation and continued their partnerships. Others withdrew to consider their options. A few began building their own secret military programs, determined never to be caught unprepared again. Admiral Marcus Chen retired from active duty 6 months after the tribunal. He returned to his farm and resumed growing vegetables. His uniform went back into the closet, though this time it was not locked. There would be no more hiding. Everyone knew what he was and what he had done. Sarah visited him on the anniversary of New Geneva. She was a commander now, responsible for a humanitarian mission on a Vraxian colony world. The reconstruction was going well. Schools had reopened. Hospitals were functioning. Vraxian children were learning to read from human teachers who had volunteered for the program. They sat on the porch of his farmhouse, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. The garden stretched out before them, rows of vegetables growing in peaceful soil. It was hard to believe that the man who had commanded fleets capable of destroying worlds now spent his days pulling weeds. Do you ever regret it? Sarah asked. Coming out of retirement, fighting the war. Marcus considered the question. I regret that the war was necessary. I regret that we could not find another way. I regret every life that was lost on both sides, including the Vraxian lives. But do I regret my part in it? No. Someone had to do it. Someone had to lead the response that ensured our children would be safe. He looked at his hands, calloused from farming, but still capable of operating the most advanced military systems ever built. I spent 30 years growing vegetables and hoping the war would never come. When it came, I did what I had been trained to do. Now I am back to growing vegetables and hoping I never have to fight again. Sarah nodded slowly. The Vraxian children on my mission do not know what happened at New Geneva. They are too young. They only know humans as the teachers who help them learn and the doctors who make them well. Sometimes I think that is the most important work we can do. Building new memories to replace the old ones. Marcus smiled. That is why we fight. Not for revenge, not for glory. We fight so that the next generation can live in peace. If we do our job well, your children will never have to know what it feels like to command a warship. They will think of war as something from history books, not as something that happens in their lifetime. Do you think that is possible? Marcus looked up at the stars, just beginning to appear in the darkening sky. I hope so. I have spent my whole life preparing for war while hoping for peace. Now I am an old man with dirt under his fingernails and memories of battles I wish I could forget. If my service means anything, it means that young people like you can focus on building instead of destroying. That is enough for me. Sarah reached over and took his hand. Thank you, grandfather, for everything. They sat together in silence, watching the stars emerge. Somewhere out there, human ships still patrolled the border between human space and the territories that had once belonged to the Vraxian Dominion. Somewhere out there, diplomats were negotiating new treaties and establishing new relationships. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was slowly coming to terms with the reality of human power. But here on this quiet farm, an old warrior and his granddaughter simply watched the sunset and allowed themselves to hope that the darkness they had fought would never return. The night deepened around them. peaceful and still. In the morning, Sarah would return to her mission, and Marcus would return to his garden. The work of healing would continue one day at a time, one generation at a time. That was the human way. That had always been the human way. Even in darkness, they planted seeds and waited for the light. 5 years had passed since the attack on New Geneva. The galaxy had changed in ways that no one could have predicted. The old Galactic Council had dissolved, its authority undermined by years of ineffective responses to conflicts that had nearly torn civilization apart. In its place rose the Galactic Union, a new organization built on principles that humanity had insisted upon. The Union's headquarters orbited a neutral world chosen specifically because no species had ever claimed it. The station was massive, large enough to house representatives from every known civilization. At its center stood a memorial that every visitor was required to pass. It showed images from New Geneva, children playing, families gathering, the moment before everything changed. Below the images, names scrolled endlessly. 400,000 names, a reminder of what had started it all. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Union Assembly, preparing to deliver her first address as humanity's chief representative. She had come a long way from the young officer who had watched her grandfather lead fleets to war. Now she was the face of human diplomacy, the person responsible for ensuring that the sacrifices of the past would not be forgotten. The assembly chamber was full. Representatives from 100 species watched her with expressions ranging from respect to suspicion to open curiosity. They knew who she was. They knew her family's role in the war. They knew that the woman standing before them had personally helped rebuild Vraxian communities that her grandfather's forces had devastated. "Thank you for this opportunity to address the Union," Sarah began. "I stand before you as a representative of humanity, but also as a witness to the events that brought us here. I was there when the war began. I was there when it ended. I watched my people transform from peaceful neighbors into the most effective military force the galaxy had ever seen. And I watched them choose to stop." She paused, letting her words settle. 5 years ago, the Vraxian Dominion killed 400,000 human civilians, including 150,000 children. They believed this would make us afraid. They believed we would retreat and surrender and accept whatever terms they offered. They were wrong. But they were not wrong in the way they expected. Sarah pulled up a display showing the human fleet at its peak strength. Thousands of ships, weapons beyond counting, the combined might of a civilization that had been preparing for war since the day it reached the stars. We could have destroyed them. Every military analysis agrees on this point. We had the capability to sterilize every Vraxian world, to wipe their species from existence, to ensure they would never threaten anyone again. Some of our people demanded exactly that. They had lost children, parents, siblings. They wanted revenge, and they had the power to take it. She turned off the display. We chose not to, not because we are naturally merciful, not because we are incapable of hatred. We chose restraint because we had learned through centuries of our own terrible history that revenge is a poison that destroys the one who drinks it. We had already walked the path of genocide once, long ago on our homeworld. We knew where it led. We refused to walk it again. The chamber was silent. Species that had expected a triumphant speech about human superiority found themselves listening to something very different. Today, I want to talk about what comes next. The war is over. The criminals have been punished. The Vraxians are rebuilding under new leadership. But the questions that started the war remain unanswered. How do we build a galaxy where children are safe? How do we create trust between species that have every reason to fear each other? How do we ensure that what happened at New Geneva never happens again? Sarah stepped away from the podium and walked among the representatives. She stopped before the Vraxian delegation, a group of young reformers who had risen to power after the old government collapsed. The Vraxians are here today as members of the Union. Many of you questioned this decision. Why should we trust the species that murdered our children? Why should we give them a voice in our councils? The answer is simple, because the alternative is worse. If we exclude them, we teach them that redemption is impossible. If we punish the innocent for the crimes of the guilty, we become no better than the ones we defeated. She moved to the center of the chamber. Humanity has learned many lessons from this war. We learned that our kindness was not enough to keep us safe. We learned that some species will always see gentleness as weakness. We learned that peace must be protected by strength, even if that strength is never used. But we also learned something else, something more important. Sarah looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from species that had feared humanity, species that had envied humanity, species that had wondered what humans were really capable of. We learned that our greatest strength is not our weapons or our fleets or our technology. Our greatest strength is our ability to choose. We can choose to destroy or to rebuild. We can choose to hate or to forgive. We can choose to become monsters or to remain human. Every day we make that choice. Every day we decide what kind of species we want to be. She returned to the podium. The new Geneva Accords, which form the foundation of this union, require every member species to protect children above all else. Any attack on children, by any species, will be met with the united response of all others. This is not just a law, it is a promise that what happened to our children will never happen to anyone's children again. Sarah's voice softened. I lost cousins at New Geneva. My grandfather lost his son and grandchildren. Ambassador Helena Vasquez, who led our diplomatic efforts during the war, lost her entire family. We carry that grief every day. We will carry it until we die. But we refuse to let that grief define us. We refuse to let it turn us into the very thing we fought against. She looked directly at the Vraxian delegation. To the Vraxians, I say this: you are not your parents. You are not the ones who ordered the attack. You have the opportunity to build something new, to prove that your species can be more than its worst moment. We will help you if you let us. Not because you deserve it, but because the alternative is a galaxy where species are forever defined by their failures. That is not the galaxy we want to live in. She turned to the broader assembly. To everyone else, I say this: humanity is not your enemy. We are not your masters. We are your neighbors, your partners, your friends. We have shown you our darkness because we wanted you to understand our light. We have shown you what we are capable of because we wanted you to know that when we choose peace, we choose it deliberately, knowing the full cost and the full alternative. Sarah raised her hand toward the memorial visible through the chamber's windows. 400,000 people died so that this union could exist, not because we wanted them to die, not because their deaths were necessary. They died because someone believed that killing children was an acceptable political tactic. We built this union to ensure that no one ever believes that again. We built it on the graves of our children, and we will defend it with everything we have. She lowered her hand. But we will not defend it with hatred. We will not defend it with revenge. We will defend it with justice, with compassion, and with the unyielding determination to be better than our worst instincts. That is what humanity offers the galaxy. Not our strength, not our technology. Our choice. Our daily, deliberate, difficult choice to be kind in a universe that does not reward kindness. Sarah took a deep breath. We showed you our darkness so you would understand our light. The darkness is always there. It will always be there. But the light is a choice. Every species in this chamber has the same choice. Every day you decide whether to build or destroy, whether to trust or fear, whether to reach out your hand in friendship or close it into a fist. She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the young officer she had once been, full of hope despite everything she had seen. Choose wisely. Choose kindness. Choose trust. Choose to build a galaxy where children can grow up without fear. That is what our children would have wanted. That is what they were singing about on the day they died. They believed in a galaxy where species could live together in peace. Let us build that galaxy in their memory. Sarah stepped back from the podium. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then slowly the representatives began to stand. First the humans, then the Solari. Then species that had opposed humanity in the past. One by one, they rose to their feet, acknowledging not victory, but commitment, not strength, but choice. Outside the chamber windows, the stars burned bright against the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, human ships still patrolled the borders, ready to respond to any threat. But here, in this chamber, something else was being built. Something that might last longer than any fleet or weapon or empire. A promise, a hope, a choice made together by species that had every reason to fear each other, but chose to trust instead. The Union's work was just beginning. There would be setbacks and failures and moments when the old hatreds threatened to return. But today at least, the galaxy had chosen a different path. Today at least, the children of New Geneva had not died in vain. Sarah Chen looked out at the stars and allowed herself to believe that her cousins, wherever they were, would be proud of what their deaths had built. Not a monument to grief, not a memorial to hatred, but a living, breathing commitment to ensuring that no species would ever again have to bury its children because of another's cruelty. That was humanity's gift to the galaxy. Not their weapons, not their technology, their choice, their endless, patient, determined choice to be better than their worst moments. The light of distant suns filled the chamber as the session concluded. Outside, the galaxy waited, and somewhere in that vast darkness, seeds that had been planted in blood and grief were finally beginning to grow toward the light. The war was over, the healing had begun, and humanity, as always, had chosen hope.